All right, everyone. Welcome to the T-Rap Show, where we showcase elite athletes and sport individuals with their inspiring stories and rise to glory in their pursuit of greatness. Today, we have the immense pleasure of having Aaron Volpatti, a retired NHL player turned author and successful mental training coach. I'm telling you, you're in for a treat today with a successful career in the NHL, but also an inspirational story about overcoming adversity. He has become a sought-after expert in mental training and guiding athletes to unlock their full potential and achieve their goals. Like myself, his unique perspective as a former professional athlete allows him to connect with his clients, I believe, on a deeper level, providing them with the tools and strategies they need to succeed in their sport and life. With a focus on mindset, resilience, and self-belief that we're going to really dive deep in today, Aaron is empowering athletes to overcome obstacles, stay motivated, and perform at their very best. If you haven't read his book yet, Fighter, I highly recommend getting it. We'll put a link to the Amazon link in the description. Not just if you're an athlete, but also looking for a story to move and inspire you. So, Aaron, welcome, man.
Trapper, thanks for having me, man. That intro was next level. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I been listening to your audiobook as I drive to work, but then I always have to buy a hard copy because I like to read at night, and then I'm nerdy, like I tab things and highlight and do all that fun stuff. But I feel like I've known you for forever, man. Your story, it like brought me to tears. It made me laugh. It was a love story, like all of it combined. Man, I just, first of all, I want to commend you on what you've accomplished, you know, the adversity you've overcome, your attitude, the new book, you have a beautiful family, all of it, man. Really, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. The impact has definitely been felt with the book. And, you know, I knew, you know, my story is a little bit of a crazy one, I guess you could say. And so it's always been this side project, but yeah, really the thing is no one knew about the real story, right? And, you know,
right.
as a man, especially in hockey, we're not taught to just open up and lay it all out there, right? So that was a challenge for me, and I did that. And yeah, even my family and close friends are like, wow, I just had no idea of, I mean, as far as everyone was concerned, like, you know, my buddy is like, Patty got burnt and, you know, he recovered and he made it. It's like, well, no, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
Right. And I just never told anyone about it. So the feedbacks and impact has been really good. And like you said, it's there's a lot of different emotions in the journey, right? It's not just a hockey book, really. There's a lot more to it. So
yeah. And I mean, we'll dive deep into when getting to the NHL, but I mean, did you ever think you'd be where you are now with everything you've gone through and achieved now when you were a kid playing the BC Hockey League?
No, not at the moment, because I made the mistake. I just talked about this in a talk I had last week with a big group of, you know, I made the mistake that most of us make. And that is, you know, putting governors on those dreams and really, you know, chipping away at what that dream should look like, because I wasn't really that good. So every kid, you know, playing hockey at least dreams of playing in the NHL. You know, when I started realizing around probably like 13, 14, like that's not going to happen. Like, I didn't want to be naive. I was a pretty good player in Revelstoke, very above average, but you know, it's Revelstoke. We had like 10 people on our team every year. Like,
I grew up in small town BC as well.
I got cut from all the select teams, and if I would have been in Vancouver or Kelowna, I wouldn't have made I might have made AA, but I wouldn't have made AAA, and played house hockey, and you know, got one goal my first year in Vernon in junior A. So I just I didn't have a reason in my mind at the time to think I could actually go do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I made that mistake.
So having said that, do you think, because now there's, and this is another reason I love your story, is now there's such an emphasis, sport has progressed. And that's the nature of sport. You talked about the 4-minute mile and how I mean, that's pretty much a standard now. You want to run in the NCAA.
It's probably 3 minutes. I don't even know what it is now.
But the visualization you've mastered now, where you are with that, if you had a coach or someone that, brought that to you earlier, like, kind of in your minor hockey leagues, do you think your career would have progressed faster or you would have played longer in the NHL?
I mean, I don't know about playing longer in the NHL just because of that neck injury. I think maybe because I practiced it, right, in the NHL, but I think going back, if I would have known this earlier, I think for sure it would have had some impact on performance. But with that said, like, you need to go through those rough times. And, it doesn't have to be a life-threatening burn injury, obviously, but, it's not just, the journey doesn't look like this. There's going to be ups and downs. And I think it's, so I like to use the analogy of Google Maps, right? Like, what happens when you put in your destination in Google Maps and you hit start, and what happens when you make a wrong turn or you miss a turn, right? What does it do?
Recalculating.
Yeah, right. So, but that's what our ability as humans to recalibrate is. That's what like grit and resilience is. And you don't just get handed that on a silver platter.
Yeah.
Right. You got to go find it. You got to build it, and you build it in those wrong turns, in the adversity. So with that said, absolutely, I think, the visualization piece would have helped me had I known it sooner. But you have to go through those times because you're going to need a lot of grit and resilience. If you have big dreams like that sacrifice, that obsession's got to match that, which I don't think a lot of kids know that these days. Right. And so I say, hey, this visualization practice is going to make a huge difference for you, like in the performance and on the belief side as well. But that's where it's important to instill that belief, because tough times, they're coming.
Right.
And what happens when you get there, right? If you don't have that, you probably fall off.
Yeah.
And it's those of us that can navigate that map and navigate those wrong turns that make it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think performance for sure would have increased, and, maybe I get a scholarship sooner. Right. But I think though, like, I know I could tell people now, like, I would never have made the NHL without my burn injury. There's no way. It's just, because I, again, like, uncovered this golden nugget of the power of the mind.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't get there without that.
And so, okay, in your book, I got to read this staying over and over. You said, stay in the fight. Don't give up. Don't let the doctors tell you what you're capable of. Remember, the pain is your body healing. Visualize, live in the other reality. The pain will come again. Embrace it. It can't break you. So just staying in the fight, life, success, sport. I mean, it's all really just about staying in the fight. Someone said, a winner is just a loser that didn't give up. And I heard that the other day, and it's so true, man. We're so programmed to give up so quickly, right? And
we're not wired for success, unfortunately. Right. We're just not. So that's what I said to myself over and over in the hospital, because you want to talk about pain and wanting to give up. It was relentless when I was in that burn unit, right? And the recovery to come back from that injury, to come back and play hockey like, listen, I'm not advocating for people to defy doctors or medical experts. For me, yes, I had to do that, but it was more, I didn't want to let them dictate my future, what was possible. They laid this gavel down, right? And it was more me not accepting that diagnosis or prognosis, right?
Right.
That doesn't mean, again, that didn't mean it was easy, but as you
But
read.
But I mean, I know you mentioned it in your book, with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I've read his stuff and
Yeah.
listened to it. Like, I mean, the placebo effect, which was a crazy book as well. Yeah, you're right. You don't want to go on and go against medical recommendations and that sort of thing. But having said that, the mind can manifest almost anything.
Totally.
And I've seen that over and over.
Yeah, I like to say, your body can only take you so far. Your mind can take your body anywhere your mind wants to go.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, like I've lived that, and I just got thrust into this again, thankfully, and that's why, all these pieces of adversity, these wrong turns that I've had in my life, and there's been a lot of them. They've all been a gift, every one of them, in some form, right?
Yeah.
And every piece of success or greatness it's always been preceded by like very extreme adversity. And I know now that that's not an accident.
Yeah.
Right. But you have a choice in those moments, right? Where I have this epiphany in the burn unit. I could have just rolled the dice and seen what happened. And I'll tell you, my life would look a lot different now if I had done that.
Right.
Right.
Totally. I think that's what captivated me about your book, why I couldn't put it down. I literally read it like front to back. It was like, okay, you started with the burn, and then you're working through that, overcoming that. Then you went to university. I was like, okay, like, sweet, this is where things get good. And then it was like another setback. And then you get to the NHL, and I was like, okay, well, this is where, he's going to take off. And then another, setback and an injury. And then it was, Claire was in the hospital, and then, Michelle was, and it was like, holy shit. And you realize like life happens like that, but it's everybody's, your story is what's so powerful. And that adversity, like you said, that's the secret ingredient.
It is. Yeah. And again, you don't think that in the shit when you're in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, now I reflect back, and it was just like, yeah, wow, again, it's tough to say thankful that like someone in my family ends up in a hospital, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But it's almost like it's happened for a reason, and to where I am now, like there is some form of being thankful for everything, and that the journey that has led me here.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, there's been some rough times.
I had Kurt Meinard on, who competed in the Paralympics. He was in an electrical accident that he lost his whole arm, and just about, like, he said the same thing. Like, he wouldn't be where he was without an injury. If I hadn't been diagnosed with a critical illness and spent my 60 days in the hospital, I don't think I'd be where I am today and as successful as I've been in business. And you really see a gap there, Aaron, where individuals, athletes use that to catapult them, and then others use it to slip into depression or, other states like that where they go less. What do you think is that trigger there that really allows someone to, hey, this is adversity, I'm going to be stronger, I'm going to come out of this and be better, to opposed to just wallowing in their own self-pity and coming down from that?
I like to think those are like forks in the road, right? When you have those moments of extreme adversity, it's a fork in the road. There's two choices to make, right? It's like you said, wallow in the self-pity, which I did that, right?
Right. I think everyone, like, initially you can
do that, right? But then there's the other choice, right? Of so you always have the choice of okay, what's next here? Where do I go? Right. And for me, it all comes down to, I think purpose is a huge one,
Mm,
and holding on to that dream.
right.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
where that's where the visualization piece for me, it cultivated both of those things. Right. So
Yeah.
that for me, my dream was the NCAA. And then later the NHL wasn't always the NHL, right? As
Yeah.
you read. Um, and like I had such a deep rooted purpose of and protection of that dream that I said no to that. The doctors telling me I couldn't play anymore. Like what I said, what I'm hearing is you're telling me it's going to hurt too much, is
Right.
basically what I'm hearing. And it hurt a lot.
Yeah. I can't imagine some of the pain
But
you were in.
that, I was willing to go down that road. Right. And there
Yeah.
were days where I wanted to give up on every day at some point. Right. But that purpose for me was protecting the dream and proving these people wrong and myself right of what I
Mm,
was capable of.
yeah.
And I was going to see that through. I mean, my mindset really was like I was willing to die before giving up. I really was.
Right.
Right. And when you have something like a purpose and that deeply rooted in you, nothing can stand in your way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a huge, huge piece.
So you had a client, I know I read in there, they picture walking out onto the ice and then they high five their younger self. And that's kind of their
Yeah,
visualization
that was a really good
piece.
one. That was
Yeah.
a good
So
one.
let me ask you, what if you could go back, talk to your younger self, what would you tell him?
I would probably say, don't be scared of the darkness. Embrace that.
Yeah.
It's not going to seem like it in the moment, but there's gold in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
because again, you don't think that in those moments, right?
Yeah. You talked about a defining moment where you were just like, F it, I'm gonna play in the NHL, and you kind of came to that realization and that decision. Aaron, how much do you think success, whether it's in sport or business, comes down to making that decision right there? How much does that play a role in it?
I think it's huge.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so there's a difference between like obsession and sustained obsession. I don't know if you've, kind of heard of those terms specifically, but like anyone can get obsessed with something,
Right.
but if you've actually made that choice or your subconscious knows,
Or you're just saying it.
or you're just saying it. Is
Yeah.
it fluff? Right.
Yeah.
If it's not fluff and you truly make that choice, then I think it's all about that.
Hmm.
It's such a huge, huge piece.
Yeah.
Right. Like the moment I made that choice, and the reason I hadn't made it earlier is because, as you read, I was just young and naive and I didn't have the wherewithal, at 24 years old to think, hey, dummy, like what you've been doing these last few years, we might be leaving a little bit off the table here.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't think that. And I had these little carrots dangling along that journey, along my path, over here. And I had this talk with my coach, who said, hey, I think you should maybe like think about pro hockey here. And it was kind of like, I was like, what? Why? I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it was all about that choice. So in the burn unit, it was that choice. And then years later at 24, it was that choice. And right away, it just cultivated that trust and belief that I would do that. Right. And the visualization practice every day just built that up stronger and stronger. So go back to like the Google Maps reference. It wasn't a matter of if for me at any point. It was never a matter of if.
Right. Yeah.
It was when, right?
Yeah.
And same thing with goals. Like when I work with my clients, I say goals are hokey, right?
Yeah,
Because
I know you said that in the book. I liked it.
I think it's different. Like if you're talking about business, those targets and goals, I think can live differently,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're talking about a personal, dream, or say as an athlete,
Yeah,
the way you frame that in your mind, if it's just because everyone writes down goals and you're taught to think positive, it
right.
doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, so the way that it lives in your mind, as it's when, not if, and I'm going to have that mindset, like I'm going here no matter what.
Right.
And that's not to say, again, we can't predict the future. I would agree, right? But you can greatly influence and shape the future with visualization and how you think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I get, like when I work with whoever, I'm not going to guarantee you that you can become an Olympic gold medalist. I'm not saying you can't, absolutely, right? And
Yeah.
maybe you end up like right below it, and that's still pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's more just, don't discount, what you're capable of, which, we do as humans. We're wired to have those limiting beliefs of what we can actually accomplish.
Yeah, which is
So it's more just knocking those walls down, right?
yeah. Yeah. It goes back to like goals, really goes back to what you said. Like if you're saying, oh, I want to play in the NHL because you think that's what your parents want or that's what your coaches want, like it's the same as just writing down goals. If you're just writing them down because, oh, well, this is what we're supposed to do, or do you actually believe it to the core that, man, I will lay it out all out on the line. One of the things I do is I keep a winning resume. So it's in my goals binder that I read daily, and it's all my wins I've had, whether they're in sport, business, life, and I go back and it was a decision. Then it was an all-out commitment to do whatever it took to get there, on every one of those cases, and that's where, like it's not a goal, you just know it,
right? Yeah. When you set the goal, if that's what you want to call it, and then you just continue on as you did, and let the chips fall where they may. That's a hope and a wish now.
Right. Totally.
That's what most goals are.
Yeah.
They're hopes and a wish because, are you truly doing what needs to be done to go there?
Yeah.
Right. And if you have it reframed in your mind, and that's where visualization and cultivating that belief will drive obsession, right? Do shit that no one else wants to do. Right. And the most successful people are those people, you got your freak natural talents in any sport, sure, but that's pretty rare, right? Most people have done things that 99.9% of people don't do.
Yeah.
Right.
But even the freaking talent, like you've been to the show, it. I remember I played with some big names, and like me on a good day, them on a good day, we hit the ball the same. Mm-hmm. But it was like, man, they hit a bad shot, they have a bad tournament, they have a bad month. It didn't even phase them. Like they didn't really care. They were like, I'm going to win a Masters, I'm going to win a major, and I'm probably going to have 20 PGA Tour wins. Like they just, so what? That really means nothing if I don't play well at the Phoenix Open. They could care less. Where I would get in my head and be like, okay, bad tournament. Like, so that belief just to the core was the biggest thing I seen separate elite athletes from, talent only gets you so far. You look at Connor Bedard, right? Yeah. So they want, the Canadian team won. Well, the lights are out, the stadium's out. Who's out on the ice still practicing hitting pucks? It was Connor. Like, there's no, talent gets you so far, and then it's that grit like you talked about.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there with, that dream or that guiding star, right? And when you have such a deep seated sense of belief in that you're going to go there, then it just starts becoming this versus all these roller coaster ups and downs that most of us are so focused on the outcomes of the daily task or
Yeah.
the daily practice or game, where that just starts to become, a smoother ride, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, that's not to say you're not going to go through like a larger down or up for sure, right? But
Totally.
when you can see that guiding star every day, and you can almost like transport yourself into that reality and live as that person, you start only caring about that, right? Where
Yeah.
the small outcomes start to matter less, like you just said, right?
Yeah.
And you can cultivate that with the mind, right? And have that trust in the journey, right? And so when you make a mistake, and that's a huge thing that, especially like my younger clients, these kids grow up in a different world. And if they make a mistake, like the world's over, everything's over.
Right.
And it's
Totally.
like,
Totally.
well, but that's because you're so consumed about not making the mistake, and you've practiced it in your head so many times,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
is a big problem. But more just trusting, because you don't have that belief that you can do that. So we need to knock those walls down, because the more you can, cultivate that, the less the mistake matters in the day to day, right? Because it's just, you're so laser focused on the big picture,
Right.
that the smaller things doesn't phase you anymore.
So some tangibles for our listeners and viewers. Let's say, and I have boys. I have twin boys. They're 12.
Oh, you have twins, nice.
Yeah, which is great. Which means one hockey practice, one hockey game.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll be the Sedin twins, but they definitely love the game. And so Finn comes to you. He says, "Dad, I want to play in the NHL, just like you did."
He's already doing that.
What do you tell him? How do you coach him? How do you help him with adversity?
Well, first of all, I tread lightly because he's only 7. And right now I say, buddy, just like right now you got to have fun. And I think that's a whole other conversation that we could have, is how, especially hockey in Canada, it's so crazy so early. And I don't, oh, sorry, 1 second. I got a call coming in.
I seen a 9-year-old on YouTube, and he's like on this balancing, and he's just the puck's going back and forth, and he's 9. And I'm like,
yeah, I don't, again, it's such a fine balance because when I was a young kid, I would go like shoot. My dad would bring me these like wooden pucks home that he made at his work, and I would just blast those things all day.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's fine, but it's, because you're not on, sorry, this phone's going off. You're not on the ice every day.
Right.
Right. So my point is I'm trying to tread lightly, because I don't want him to fall into the trap that I see a lot, where, these kids turn 17, 18 and they got all the talent in the world, and they're kind of like, man, I'm just done. I'm burnt out. So I think, and that's where it's tricky. I think it's really important to be a kid when you're, until, and we could have this debate, but, when you're like, 13, 14 and you want to specialize, like, absolutely. Like that age of say 14 to 20, like that's go time. Like if you want to do something special here, it's time to go.
Right.
But it's the full-time job at 9, 10 that, and that's where I would tread carefully with Finn. And I'd say, like, you got to be a kid, man. You got to go play other sports, go play on that dirt hill over there, go play road hockey like that. Do kids play road hockey anymore? Like they're on the ice every day of the year.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
Anyways, that's my point, is I tread carefully there. So he'll say, like, he's like, he thinks he's going to be in a famous rock band and play in the NHL. And hey, I'm like, I dream big, man. That's what I preach.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't he dream big?
100%.
And I think you got to hold on to that. But so my dialogue with him is, I love it, dude, but I say, you know how hard that would be, right? And he doesn't. And so he says no. And I'm like, it's going to be really, really hard. And I'm not saying you can't do it. You absolutely can. Right. So it's just more that putting that birdie in his ear versus thinking it's just going to happen.
Right.
Right. So he's young, like I said, but yeah, like once he gets older, then I would drive he knows, and he knows about, my book and most things about my journey. Right. And when so he knows now that he'll tell me, so you made it because like you worked hard, right? And I'm like, absolutely.
They start figuring that out.
He starts figuring that out, but then he'll test me and he'll go, but like there must have been some guys that worked harder than you. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you that there isn't. Right? Like, I'm like, there's no way. That's why I made it. I mean, because of the discovery of the power of the mind and where that got me, but that drove me, especially that senior year at Brown. There's no way that anyone in the NCAA put in that work that I did.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
So,
and so that's what I tell him. And right. And same thing, like, so he's a really good drummer and there's something there, and he's got some talent there, and we like rock out, and it's great. I love it. And but I tell him like, hey, if you ever make it big, don't forget about your dad. I want to be in the band too.
Yeah. backup singer. Yeah.
But yeah, it's more the dialogue of, this talent is great. And if you, eventually, again, like when he gets a little bit older, if you want to do something, then the guys that make it are the guys that they're practicing for hours and hours a day.
Yeah.
So again, like you said, that talent, it only gets you so far. And so that's more the dialogue I have with them. That was a really long-winded answer, but
no, it's good, man. There's a couple of things I just so well, my boys have told me they're going to drive Lamborghinis. One's green, one's yellow. I'm like, cool, dude. Where are you going to live? With you and mom. What do you mean where we're going to live? I'm like, so you can drive Lamborghinis.
You're buying the Lamborghini.
Oh man. But you talked about burnout. So this is crazy. And I want to dive a little deeper into this because what you went through, if anyone's going to burn out, you should have burnt out, from like overcoming burns to, setback to injury to constant pain. I've lived with chronic pain, and like, that's just something that wears on you mentally. It's like every freaking day. So like how does that burnout happen, especially for someone like you that really focuses on the mental side? How can someone like you put in more time, work harder, overcome more adversity than anyone, and another kid hits 19, they're like, I'm burnt?
Again, I think it's for me, it was all about cultivating that, making the choice, right, and then cultivating that belief. It really just all came down to that belief that I was going there. Where, again, I think going back to the goals thing, I think the people that burn out when things get hard, they don't have that belief. So that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
And they're more letting the chips fall where they may. Like in my mind, that was never my mindset. I was never just seeing what happened. It was like, no, I'm going here and no one can stop me.
Yeah.
Right. So with that said, like when I was a kid, I didn't play hockey all year round, right? It was different times back then. And I know it's different now, but when it was go time for me, like, I had lots. Yeah. But even before the burn, right? Like, cause I was trying to get a scholarship when I, went to play junior hockey. But, from the age of say 5 to 13, like we played hockey 6 months of the year, and then we were kids.
Right.
And so we had a lot left in the tank at 15, 16, where, some of the kids, they've been on the ice every single day of the year for, 6 years at that point.
Right.
Right. And again, it's so tricky now because, I understand that if you don't do that, you fall behind, but there is an element of the cream rises to the top and going at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't think it's not go time at 10. Right. You need to be a kid too.
Yeah.
Right. And it's more just if you really love hockey and you want to play in the NHL and you're obsessed, I absolutely support that. Right.
Yeah.
But it's more, again, like if Finn came to me at that age, I'd be like, you got to put your skates away for the summer, dude. Like, you're not allowed on the ice.
Right.
And I say that now, and I hope because people have asked me that, well, what happens if he's really good at 10? And that's what I believe, and I'd like to think maybe I'm being naive and all the parents are just like, just wait. But no, man, that's what I believe right now. Like, go play road hockey.
Right.
Right. You can develop a lot of skills with that too.
Totally.
And so I think, it's funny now. I've talked to a few people and coaches when the kids get older, and so hockey specifically, when we go do like a dry land thing, like I'll be like, hey, can you pass me that ball? And the kid can't throw a ball, or he can't kick a ball.
Right. Yeah.
But they have no other skills.
Right.
And we know that it's better for development if you do other things and practice other sports and, again, be a kid. But I mean, we're that's a little bit off track. But it's a whole other topic that we could talk about forever, I'm sure.
But it really comes down to, like, we think and maybe this is more parents that haven't played professionally. They missed out on their dreams or whatever. And
That's a problem too, right?
Controversy, but like you and I know what it takes to get to a professional level. I had my pro card for 10 years. Yeah. It's less of the parent and more of the kid. Like, you think of Gretzky, his parents had to drag him off the ice. You think of Tiger Woods, like his parents literally had to drag him. Yes, they supported it. Yes, they gave him all the tools and they were all in 100%. Yeah. But that level, really, your parents weren't dragging you from the hospital. Hey man, you got it. No, that was a decision you made.
Right? Yeah, it all has to come from you. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's where most parents get it. We want them great things. And I've always been direct with my boys. Like, listen, hey, you want to play in the NHL? 100% I can get you there. But that's a totally different commitment from dad. It's a totally different commitment from you.
You can't put in the work for them.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. And again, it's more just the dialogue of understanding how hard that's going to be. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? You and 10 million kids, and I mean, I don't know the number, but a lot of kids have the same dream. And if you want to talk about now around the whole world, I mean, put a number on that one. Yeah. So what's the difference between you and 100 million kids? Right? It's the work.
It's always been my name.
Not talent.
Yeah. It's...
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the one and only Trapper Goldsmith in the world.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, man. So you work with clients, like, and I loved your analogy. You have some great analogies and talking about a sled going down and get stuck in the path.
Yeah.
The older we get, our old programming, like it gets ingrained. And a great book I also read, continue to read, is What to Say When We Talk to Ourselves. I'm not sure if you're, but it's along same lines. You find it easier to work with younger clients that don't have that old programming or limiting beliefs so ingrained than older clients? What do you feel you have to work differently with either of them?
Yeah, I think there is an element of sometimes the quickest change can happen in the younger kids that I work with, because there is an element of plasticity, I think, there, where they've been hardwired since, say, whatever age, 7-ish years old, well, they haven't been down that toboggan path as much as, someone
Right.
our age, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Where, like you said, it can be really, really difficult to get out of that path because you fired it for decades. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little more challenging for sure. And really, so there's two things, especially with, the older, like professional clients, say, or even people that are older that want to be a professional, right? But do they have the belief?
Right.
So the number one is the consistency, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people, I'd rather you visualize a little bit every day than, once a week be like, shit, I forgot to do my visualization this week. I'm going to sit here for 40 minutes. No, I'd rather just consistency, because you're just slowly, again, that snowfall. If you think about the toboggan analogy, there's a little dump of snow there, and you might touch a little bit of new ground every day. That's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was going to say something else too. It'll come to me. But yeah, that's the big one, is just the consistency, right?
Right.
And
I liked how you said in the book, you said, I don't know, some people, like, maybe when you're younger, 21 days, you do it for 21 days and it's great. Or maybe it's 6 months, like the timeline, I don't know, but you really, it's that consistency, like you said, sticking with it.
Yeah. I think I always find I call it like the switch, or there's a moment with every client that I work with where everything changes, and then there's buy-in, right? And not that there's not always buy-in to start, but some people are like visualization voodoo, right?
Wow.
Like
most people, though, anything, they need a result. If I'm going to try a diet, I don't get a result after a week, it doesn't work. I try visualization, it doesn't work after a week. Man, that voodoo stuff doesn't work, right? People, and that's just the majority of people, they need results.
Yeah. So, and with that said, I find that switch will often happen earlier with the younger clients, and it sometimes takes a little bit, because again, there has to be consistency there.
Yeah.
Right. And so by the switch or that flip, I mean, something that they've imagined or that we've worked on and visualized happened. And then they're like, mind blown.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so there's two types of visualization. There's what most people think of, which is the rehearsal imagery. And that's like executing the skills in your sport. Right. Yeah. So in golf, it's me visualizing going out and playing my round, say.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other type is the belief imagery. And that's where, I teach like my clients, direct and write this movie of what you want your life, this journey to look like.
Yeah.
Right. And you literally think about it as a movie.
Yeah.
And so the other key piece there is cultivating emotion. Right. So, and that's like similar to, the Joe Dispenzas and all these things, right? It's so true, where you can't evoke change in the brain without that emotion and experience. Right. And when you do that, so that when they have buy-in on the rehearsal imagery side, and something that they've imagined, scoring a big goal in a game, and then they go out and do it, and they're like, holy shit, like I want to do this more now. Right. And then it's like, okay, I want you to do that on the belief imagery side too. And then you start cultivating belief. And if you can make it emotional, then you start really, really driving home that belief.
Yeah.
Because you're essentially transporting yourself into this other reality, which your brain goes, when you can create that experience, which takes a lot of practice to do. Right. Your brain goes, I really like this version of Aaron. Like that felt pretty damn good. Yeah. And I'm going to make sure that happens. Right. Yeah. So that's where that flip happens, where there's total buy-in. Right. Yeah.
That's so good. Kind of wrap. I feel like we could go, you get me talking on the mental side and your story, man, we could go all day. But just as an athlete, we're very focused. Like you have one goal. I'm not trying to run several businesses. I'm not like, you just get so hyper focused. And I think, and some people might argue with me, but I think the path to becoming a professional athlete is very simple. Like it's like climbing Everest, right? You just got to climb to the top. Like that's the path. But getting there, that's the challenge, the variables, the weather, all of that. So that was easy to, like, you made that decision. You're going to play in the NHL. Boom, that's made. Talk about, like, what's your focus now after sport? You have the book coming out. Do you find it more difficult now to have that, like, hyper focus and that same passion on a goal or just your to-do list? As you refer to it.
Yeah, you're right. I totally resonate with, as an athlete, it's just the one thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically how long can you stay in the fight to get there?
Yes.
Right. Where now for me, it's like, well, I have like a bunch of things going on. Right?
Exactly.
I have my coaching business. I have the book. I have my speaking business. And yeah, that's been a learning curve for me, is to, like, where do I spend my time? And it's like any business, right? Like even in your business, where do I spend my time today that's going to get me to where I want? And where I want to go, there's actually a bunch of things there. So now, when, like, my visualization practice, for example, looks a lot different now, right? In my ending of my movie, it was again, like you said, laser focused as an athlete. Now there's like a bunch of things in there, right?
Yeah.
Whether, be around the book or how I want my speaking business to go, and like rehearsing that, right? And
so do you change that on a daily basis based on what you're doing today? It's like, okay, I got to promote the book. I got to speak with. Do you change your morning visualization to what you have to do that day?
I'll tailor it a little bit based on, maybe what time of year it is. Like if I got a big push for the book, or I have like, 5 keynotes coming up, or I'm launching like my online course.
Right.
They all live in my visualization, but again, depending on what time of year, then I'll spend like a bit of extra time there, kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so for example, like flipping it to the athlete, you can always tailor that visualization. So when you direct and create this movie, like let's say it's a game day, for example, and you have this movie, well, you would just tailor it to spend a little bit of extra time on the rehearsal imagery areas for that night, right? Or that day, or whatever. Where again, it's when you do that, and if you've done that from, like, so say hockey, for example, when you've played that game in your head from, say, Monday to Saturday,
right,
and you've scored hundreds of goals in your head, and you've made those plays in your head hundreds of times, your brain, when you get there, will just be like, oh, we've done this.
I've seen this movie.
I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So but that's where the consistency comes in. Right. So my point is you tailor it. And that's what I do. What I've learned to do now is, I tailor it. If my wife and I are going through a rough patch, or, whatever it is in the personal life with my dad, I'll just spend a little bit of time there, but more like imagine the guiding star. Like, what do I want my life to look like? And this is now just becomes a little blip and a bump instead of this big thing. Right. So it just instantly brings you back down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tailor it, is basically the answer.
Nice. Awesome, man. I mean, your book's out there. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, my website is probably the best. Just my name, aaronvolpatti.com. There's you find info on the book, on the visualization programs.
Your course is on there as well.
The course is on there. Yep. Yeah. Speaking, everything's on there. So that's probably the best. And my social media is just my name as well, Aaron Volpatti. So
awesome, man. Well, today we'll stop the live here and then we'll wrap up. But fighter, unbelievable book, Defying the NHL Odds, which I think you defied the life odds with what you've been through. Highly, highly recommended. Aaron, I appreciate your time spending with us. Your mental insight, I think, is what you're doing is a huge asset to athletes and any elite individual, that whether it's an entrepreneur or business owner, wants to achieve success. So it's been a real honor, man.
Yeah, thanks, Trapper. It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.